You don't always need to throw your arms back full, right? When we have these lower kind of out of control sets and the wind is blowing the ball around, to go through your full 4-step approach with the same timing, the same depth, and big, long, flowy arms, you're usually not going to have a lot of those opportunities. Guys, today we're talking all about how to win in the wind, how to win when it's really windy. And we'll get started on that in just a few minutes. Again, we are live from St. Pete Beach in Florida. We just had a fantastic talk with the St. Pete and Clearwater Tourism Board. And we're looking forward to being here for a long time, to keep coming back here. Florida has treated us really nicely, and we want to keep rocking on it, and people love coming to Florida. So if you guys want to come to a camp this spring, April 3rd has 3 spots left. We just took a look at the signups, and we only got 3 spots left for April 3rd to April 10th. So if you guys want to jump on that, you go to betterbeach.com/camps.
Well, I think you're on your way with the 7-day mobility challenge, which is pretty cool. Seems to be going well. I know we're already getting a decent amount of questions and some people that are already thanking. So I haven't had a chance to watch those yet because I've been busy with camp, but I plan on starting my own when I get back into Hermosa and have my home back. It's been nice. I think I've been away from Hermosa for about 4 weeks now. And I love it here, but there's no place like home.
Holla at that.
Yeah.
Now, you are doing a 75 hard challenge, and then you're going to jump into the 60-day max vertical along with the 75 hard. So tell us just about 75 hard, just so we can kind of get that ball rolling.
Yeah, one of our coaches here at camp this week, Chad Mercado, it's like a self-discipline challenge. Kind of going back to what you said in the past is, I think the last 2 years, I put a lot of my energy into the company and trying to get this system rolling and kind of moving in the direction that we kind of planned for. Mm-hmm. And I kind of put myself second, like a lot. And it definitely, I think I'm seeing it, I feel it in my health. I feel it in my play. I feel it in my friendships, my family relationships. And so for me, it's just a way for me to find a way to balance my days a little bit more. With 75 hard, what it is you have to do, it's just a bunch of challenges that you have to meet daily. So you have to drink a gallon of water. You have to follow some form of diet. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, just some form of diet. For me, I'm doing gluten-free, dairy-free. So nice. I know that those are some things with me that make me feel a little funky. So I'm just going to avoid those for the next 75 days and probably further. No drinking, no junk food. You're supposed to read, or you have to read 10 pages a day of some form of motivational or inspirational book, which I have not set up a certain amount of time for reading in the past. So it's kind of nice to have that. It's a nice way for me to like relax during the day and slow my brain down. Yeah. And then something else I'm doing is meditation. And I just really want to start this year off well. I want to use this momentum that I'm going to gain with this challenge into the AVP season. And I think if I can kind of just concentrate on my overall health, mind and body, then it's going to set me up to be a better person. So yeah, I'm excited to do it. I'm on day 3, but it's going great so far, and it's really nice to have. Chad built out this community on Instagram where we have a big group, and I think it's like 25 of us. Actually, Johnny, I don't know if you know him. He was a little bit younger. His name's Johnny Gomez.
Mason guy, right?
Yeah, he played at Mason, and I didn't even realize it, but he's in that group. A lot of volleyball players, and it's just nice. Like every time I open up my Instagram or anything like that, I see a bunch of messages of like, you got this, like just so much support, and it's been pretty awesome already. So I'm looking forward to the whole thing.
That's great.
Yeah.
We had something similar going. So I know you got your support group there and your friends there, and our support group in the 7-Day Foundations program people are in there already, throwing out their problems, throwing out their goals. What we had them do, their homework was to write down what they want to be written on their gravestone. I think it's called an epitaph. Because if you're going to create micro goals going forward, you have to know somewhat how you want to end up and then build towards that. If you aim at nothing, you hit nothing. So for me, it's to be a grandpa sitting around a fireplace with a bunch of little kids and telling stories from everywhere and every walk of life. In no way, and I know that I'm on a volleyball podcast right now, but in no way do I want the end of my life to be like, here lies Mark Burik, the volleyball guy. Like if my whole life is summed up in volleyball, I don't feel like I've lived to my full potential. So I want to keep going for that. And in order to do that, I need a little bit of financial freedom so that I can go on different adventures in different countries. And I need to say yes to a lot of weird opportunities. And I need to keep learning in all different sectors so that I can have those good varying stories. I don't want my uncle, old Italian guy from Brooklyn, he had like great stories, but he had 3 of them. and he put them on repeat. Yeah. So I want to have a whole book of stories from different countries, and I'm working on that, and that feels good. And the important part for our group was that they didn't need to have it shaped completely. I said, just start writing. Give me the first ugly draft of what your goal looks like, and let's see how we can kind of drop back down. And then we're setting metrics in the group. So as our 7-Day Foundations group, we got 97 members that signed up. Now we're setting metrics. So every goal that they have for the next 2 months, they have to set a number, because we had a bunch of people that said, I want to cut out sweets. I want to drink less. I go, that is not measurable. You need to find a number, put a number to it with your statistics and everything. And then as we carry on into 60-day max vertical, I had them all do their vertical jump max, their test. They had to do how many squats they could do in 1 minute. And some of them who are experienced lifters, I said, you're going to give me your 1 rep squat max and your 1 rep power clean max, so that we have those numbers. Oh, we also did 3 broad jumps. So you total the number, that you total the distance of 3 broad jumps. And that's how we start the testing. And if those people carry on with us in 60-day max vertical and beach volleyball mastery, then it's going to be a good start. So it's all about goal setting right now.
That's awesome. Yeah. So we're talking about how to win when it's really windy. And I want to go ahead and start off, because the first day at camp this week, it was obnoxiously windy for what we've been experiencing at camp. And one of the things that when I spoke to everybody at the beginning of camp, one of the things that I challenged everyone to do was to not complain one time about the wind. And I think that's a really big moment, because I know when I first started playing, and I came from indoor where obviously there's no wind, and then I went on the beach, and it was pretty much like, if it was over 12 miles per hour, I was like, why are we even signed up for this tournament? Why are we playing? Can we get our money back? Like, I didn't want to be out there, and then eventually I realized that the wind could be my friend, and so I think like the first thing that we need to talk about before we even think about strategy, before we think about anything else, is just changing your mindset about wind. Don't look at it as being evil, because it's not going to change. Wind doesn't have emotion, it's not going to listen to you and automatically stop. But if you can go into tournaments understanding that you can use the wind to win, then I think you're already setting yourself up for a good spot. And I even had some people come up to me at the end of practice, and they were like, it was kind of crazy. Like, not complaining about the wind almost made me forget about it, and then you can almost find your natural game style again and kind of keep going. So that's my first key.
I like it. Make it your friend.
Yeah.
Love it. It should be, the wind should be a big neutralizer. It should bring certain teams that are normally mismatched in terms of height and in terms of power. It brings them onto a more level playing field usually, and then it comes into ball control, the ability to stay low. So the first thing that I'll give, so we've got make the wind your friend. Just love it. Don't complain about it. Don't whine about it. That's the weather. You're going to have to play no matter what it is. Second thing I'll say is mobility is absolutely going to be key in the wind. The way when that topspin hits the wind, the topspin is going to make that ball dive down faster, right? When that happens, you're going to have to get low. You're going to have to get into these awkward, deep squat, deep lunge positions and still have the strength to hold your balance when you're in a super deep squat, super deep lunge, because you want to wait for that little moment. If you can keep the ball kind of out of the jet stream, if you can wait extra long before you contact the ball instead of being up tall and then hitting it up high, you want to be low before you contact it so that the ball doesn't get high. It stays here. It stays, in extreme wind, maybe antenna height, a couple balls above that. So if we measure time from my contact to my setter's contact, if I stand up tall and I have the same time, that ball gets a little bit higher into the air and wind can take a little bit more control, right? If I contact it low, then I can have the same time between my forearms and my setter's contact, and that will allow them to control the ball more because the ball will just sit into their hands. It'll almost be at its neutral point in its journey up and down into their hands so that they can control that set better. But if I make that ball go way up above the top of the antenna when it's windy, then that ball has to fall down as the wind is affecting it, and the setter is not going to be able to control that. So I'd rather the ball be almost at its apex when the setter's touching the ball rather than the apex be way above the setter in windy conditions. So mobility allows you to get low, and that will help you make more plays and more control for your setter.
Yeah, and I think something to kind of continue on with that is like the common, whenever we teach that, one of the things that is brought up right away is, well, that's not enough time for my setter to get there, and I think once we decide that we are going to lower our play, so if it's super windy, if you and I were playing in a game together, we would have this conversation beforehand, and I would say, hey Mark, let's go ahead and bring everything down. Let's make sure that we're playing low and faster so that we're ready. And then we're starting to depend more on our accuracy, obviously, whether or not I'm passing a ball 6 feet above the top of the antenna, or if my peak is happening at the top of the antenna or lower, the area on the court doesn't change. So if we decide that we're going to be passing lower or setting lower, then we just have to quicken up our steps. Or make them earlier, not even quicken up. Oh. So if I decide that we're going to go low, then we just need to make sure that we're heading in that direction as a setter a little bit sooner than we would want to normally. Same thing when we're attacking. If we're going to run a low set, then your timing step isn't going to be on the setter's touch. Your timing step might be just before the setter's touch.
For those people who are new to our vernacular, what do you mean by the timing step?
So when I say timing step, it's something we commonly say when we're finding our approach. One of the big issues that we see in a lot of volleyball players is that after they pass, they just run straight to the net and try to hit. A timing step is something that you would use still maintaining space from the net, and this would be the first time that you plan on going forward, and your timing step is the first step of your approach that you would use to kind of help you feel in rhythm with the play. If you don't find that timing step, then it's really hard for your setter to give you a good set, because more than likely you don't have the ability to adjust. So I think a timing step is something that you would put down normally. If there was no wind, you would put that timing step down on the setter's contact, which would allow you to use the rest of your 4-step approach to get up and contact the ball at the optimal height that you can. So if we're talking about wind and we're and we're lowering that set, then that timing step or that first step of your approach wouldn't happen on setter's contact. We would almost have to be maybe moving on to that left step, if not putting that left step down, depending on how windy it is. I would say the windier it gets, the lower you're going to play. I think that's kind of a pretty good thing to think about, is that if you're playing in 12 to 18 mile per hour winds, then you're probably going to be leaning forward and getting ready to put that left step down. If you're playing on 18 to 22 mile per hour winds, then you might already be on that left step when the setter's touching the ball.
Yeah.
So
I like that. And when we do talk about timing steps, just remember that you're trying to get to in the same timing area every play. Because when you ask for a higher set, but you are on the second step of your approach, it means that you were early, right? Or you were late. So if you can find the variable to hold still, you should be that variable. What foot are you putting down when the setter is contacting the ball? That doesn't mean that you're just going after that foot. You still control the next 2 or 3 steps. So in a normal environment, most AVP players are putting their right foot down when the setter's contacting it. But that doesn't mean that they're just, they're going at 30 miles an hour no matter what. It means that that's when they're starting that step, so that the next steps fall into some kind of consistent time window, right? And if you don't have that step down, or you're on a different step each time the setter contacts the ball, then you're always changing the variable, and you're asking your setter to change what they give you when you have an inconsistency in your approach. So getting that timing step to be maybe on your left step, maybe your left step even becomes your timing step at that point when that setter is contacting the ball in low wind. But that doesn't mean that you're just gone. You kind of hold on to that left step, still see it, and then have a quicker gather. Which would bring me to my next point. You don't always need to throw your arms back full, right? When we have these lower kind of out of control sets and the wind is blowing the ball around, to go through your full 4-step approach with the same timing, the same depth, and big, long, flowy arms, you're usually not going to have a lot of those opportunities. So you might be able to shorten the depth of your jump so that your butt doesn't drop quite as low. You're going to have more of a tap jump instead of getting deep and squatting. Your arms might even shorten. So instead of throwing your hands back behind you in order to get that big double arm lift, you can do an elbow pump into that spike approach, and that will help you get off the ground just a little bit faster. So you might end up in extreme wind tapping the ground and like using a plyo jump rather than getting that deep squat and that long kind of flowy thing. Ideally, you don't have to, but you're going to have to learn how to use jab swings where you just quickly tap the ball instead of full open hard swings. And you'll run out of time if it's extremely windy and you want to go through your full sequence. And if you can do that in the wind, you'll be way better for when you're in transition situations and you need to rush the defense in normal conditions, right? We don't always have to win with power. You can just be ready to tap and slap before the defense is ready. And that won't feel like a full volleyball swing. It'll just feel like you're kind of patting or giving the ball a high five instead of actually swinging. But it's useful, especially in the wind, and especially if you want to rush the defense before they're in position.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think a lot of people don't realize, they almost feel like they're doing something wrong. They're not going through that full movement, but obviously when it's windy and you're trying to beat a team based on the wind, because really at that point it's who's better in the wind, and if you can shorten up all those movements and kind of go quick, then the shots don't have to be perfect as long as you're putting them in the location that you want, because they still have to make a dig, they still have to get up, get set, and do their own hit, which more than likely, if you're listening to this podcast, then they might not know the tricks that we're giving you, and they might go high, which is going to make it very difficult for them. But yeah, so I think that's really good. And I'm going to kind of going back to the offense. One thing that I didn't really think about too much until I moved out to California, where we have like a very, very consistent wind off of the ocean. Almost every single day, it's a west to east wind. I think setting yourself up offensively so that you can attack into the wind. That's something that I picked up on recently. I didn't really think about it too much. But as I've incorporated into my game in California, started to use it everywhere else. And it really does make the game a lot easier. And so what I mean by this is, let's say if you're at home and the wind is blowing from your left side to your right side. Okay, so it's blowing from your left shoulder to your right shoulder. If you're a left side player, then that means that when the set gets set to you, it's going to be trailing away from you. Which if that happens to you, that means that you're going to be chasing, which means that you're not going to be able to put a whole lot of power onto this ball. And you're probably limiting your shots because now you're not even able to contact this ball at your peak. You're going to be reaching forward towards that set that got blown away from you. So instead, even if you're on the left side of the court, that would be considered the bad side. And after you pass, it's really easy. It's not too complicated for any level. It does take some practice, especially for the set, but going behind the setter. So just not staying on your side of the court, because now if you go behind, then your cross court swing, which should be your favorite swing, most people's it is, now you're hitting back into the wind, which hitting into the wind is always a lot more fun because now you can kind of unload on this ball. You can put whatever spin you want on the ball, and it's really hard to hit this ball out. And I think just really understanding what the wind is doing and how you can set yourselves up. And the good thing about it is in beach volleyball, most of the time you're on a side for 7 points or 5 points if you're in a set of 3. So when you get over there, you just need to do a quick analyzation of what is this wind doing? Is it at my face? If it's at your face, then once again, green light, go for it. Hit that ball as hard as you want. You're probably going to leave that ball on the court because the wind's going to be pushing that ball down. If it's from the left side to the right side, then think about positioning yourself on the court so that your favorite hard cross swing is back into the wind. And then kind of the same thing. If you feel the wind at the back of your neck, then sometimes you're not going to be able to hit this ball as hard as you possibly want. Or if you're shooting, you just have to realize that it's going to carry a little bit further than you'd like it to. So I just really understanding what the wind is doing and then setting yourself up to be successful using that wind. I think that's a lot of people don't think about that, especially at the lower levels. They just think that they have to stay on their side. Oh, I'm a left side. Oh, I'm a right side. But once that ball is in play, you can switch back and forth all you want. You can go behind, you can go outside, you can go back, whatever. Just got to do what's going to help you out the most.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. So if you're talking about offense, I'm going to counter you with defense. So how do we now defend you hitting and dicing into the wind all the time? So when you're defending, most people do want to hit hard into the wind. Knowing that they want to hit hard into the wind, you could always dive into their wind side. So if the wind is coming from this side, then I'm going to run a 2 on this side because I'm going to block the way that the ball is being carried, right? I know that the wind, if it's sideways, that it's going to bring the ball in that direction, and that hitter is going to have to chase it in on any mistake sets. If that set goes up and down, the wind is going to push it sideways. So I want to block the part of the court, usually, that the wind is blowing the ball to, because the hitter will have to chase that ball with the wind, and they're going to get lower. So all of those errors are going to happen towards the wind. So that's the area of the court that I want to block. Right. And when I do that, since I'm doing that, now somebody who has to shoot, they have to shoot over me with the wind. And a lot of times what they do is they slow their arm down because they know that they have to be really light with the ball if they want to keep it in. So they'll just kind of push their hand there and they'll just kind of tap it instead of keeping a quick, snappy arm swing. So it's an easier way to make sure that any mistakes that happen, the common ones that will happen, the set will be pulled with the wind or pushed with the wind. So I want to block that side. And then I'm going to force them to go the opposite direction of their body if they want to bring heat. Right? Most of the time, they won't really be able to if they're chasing that set inside. And then I'll have a good opportunity. In extreme wind, I'm probably not even going to, if they're in trouble in any way, I'm not really even going to pick a side. I'm definitely not going to sit on the sideline. I'm going to sit 5, 6, 7 feet inside the court and make sure that I cover all of the space. That is, if I draw a 3-foot box inside the court, right? So I take 3 steps, or I take one giant step, which is 3 feet inside each sideline, and I draw that box. That's the space that I'm going to cover defensively. If you want to ping the sidelines all day, that's fine. You can, and you earned it if you played a perfect game. But I'm going to make sure that I grab all of the digs that are happening on that inner window. So I like to block wind side. And then every now and then, of course, we're going to throw in a bunch of changes. And I'm not going to give away my entire defensive and offensive strategy for win. But there are some good starting points that you'll see most players utilizing. Okay. And players that can control that defensive game and then take care of their side and then get a dig. And then once you get that dig, also going and trying to hit from the good side. There's a lot more movement when it comes to that windy game. So once I get that dig, now I got to fight again to go downwind so that I could hit into the wind.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of people are probably like, oh my gosh, like I'm already tired at the end of a game. And now you're expecting me to like run backwards and do all this other stuff. But the good thing about this is like when you are adjusting like that on offense, the defense has to do the exact same adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody is constantly moving. And if you're on offense, that's an amazing thing because now those defenders have become more visible. You know, if a defender can just kind of sit there and not move for an entire point, that's when seeing them becomes very difficult. Mm-hmm. But if they're in the back of the court, like, oh my gosh, I got to go this way. Oh my gosh, I got to go this way. Then that's when you can kind of pick up on them a little bit easier. And now, even though you went back, you're finishing the point right away. And now you can catch your breath because you finish the point really quickly instead of having these long, drawn out rallies that just looks like wind ball.
Yeah.
So
I like it.
And so since I kind of talked about attacking before and then you went to defense, I also wanted to kind of talk about it's not really a different conversation by any means when I was talking about attacking. But you need to make sure that you can use those same keys and ideas when you're at the service line too.
Yeah.
I think that that's something that I wish I had kind of said during the attacking portion because it's very similar. You know, if it's a left to right wind and you're on the side of the court where that's happening, then setting yourself up on the right side of the court and hitting your serve, whether it's a float or a jumper, cross court into their right side player.
Into the wind,
into the wind, then that's going to make their job a lot more difficult. Same kind of idea. If you're back serving and you feel that wind in your face, then you kind of have the idea that it's going to be hard for you to miss long, you know? Yeah. So if you want to go for your serve, if you want to like put some pressure on them with some power, you can. I think one of the big issues that we see with people that have the wind in their face and they're serving is a lot of times if they're going to make an error there, it's into the net. And that I think that happens because you don't necessarily compute the fact that of how much power you need. So a lot of the times you'll hear coaches say this a lot is don't be scared to miss long, you know, and I go back and forth on this saying because I don't like promoting missing, but I think the idea and the mechanical benefits that come from that saying are very, very good, you know, because if you are thinking about missing long, especially if you keep the ball somewhat close to the top of the net, it's very difficult to do. So I think that that's a good point to talk about.
Yeah. Definitely. I do like serving power and float into the wind. But also, if we're still talking about that side wind, if the wind is blowing in a direction, I want to serve straight down that sideline that the wind is blowing towards, right? Because I'm going to try to serve down that sideline. And here's what I hope. I hope that if that player tries to pass back to the middle, that they miss and they end up passing outside the court, and the wind keeps blowing that ball off of the court. If I serve down somebody's sideline, usually trying to get an ace that goes outside the court, and they shank it, but the wind is bringing the ball back into the court, it ends up, even their mistakes end up as a perfect pass, right? If I want to chip one kind of quick, and I'm going to have to be a little bit lighter, more accurate, because the wind is trying to blow it out of bounds and I can't hit it as hard as I can, then that sideline serve where the player who is downwind, if they can shank a ball or if they try to pass it straight in front of them and it keeps blowing off of the court, now the setter has this big run through set that they have to do. And the counter of that is if they make too big of an angle and they try to bring the ball hard back into the middle, it's going to have sort of this diagonal spin. And that's also going to be difficult to set because the setter is going to be too early and they're going to have to backpedal and then they might get in trouble there. So there's a lot of options. Finally, we'll just talk a little bit about setting because we did get a comment here as we were talking from Christine on YouTube. And should you bump set? Should you hand set? If your partner can pass low and there's a little bit of spin on the ball, it's kind of easy to hand set. The floaty ones in the wind are really tough to hand set when you get that gusty wind and the ball is moving in random places. But this whole idea of when people try to take spin off of a pass, everybody needs to stop that conversation. Doesn't make any sense. The physics of it just won't promote good passing. And in the wind, if you could put just a little bit of English onto your pass, then you're going to make it easier for your set. So if your partner can pass to you nice and low and you could use your hands and you're in a good position, then yeah, why not use your hands? You can control it, you can manipulate it, you can take it a little bit lower, you can take it a little bit higher, right? If you want to bump set, great. But here's going to be the key if you bump set. If you want to set a little bit higher or a little bit further and your set is fighting the wind, your set's going into the wind, you have to find a way to match the spin into the wind so that that ball sits still. It cuts through the air. If you bump set or hand set high or a far distance and you're fighting the wind, that ball is going to be the nastiest knuckleball you've ever seen. It's going to move everywhere, and now your hitter is basically like trying to swat a fly. It's so unpredictable where they go, and they're going to be tentative, and then they're going to get dug. So if you're setting into the wind and it's a far distance or you want to set high, find a way to put spin onto that so it cuts the wind. However, if we're doing the offense where we go back, then I can set however I want because I don't need that spin. So if you don't have a spin bump set, get it. If you're not there yet, make sure your hitter goes back if you have some side wind so that you can pass that ball and the wind will carry it without floating it. So now the ball will still be moving in a straight line. And that's the big advantage of going around back so that you can hit into the good side, is that you can use your hand or your bump set and you don't have to worry about putting any English on it.
I like that. And then I got to kind of head out after this little comment. But Mark, I need to meet you in person because yeah, I feel like he's.
Is this Mark Zen again or Meyerson?
Mark Zen. He's been at every single one of these, and every single time he says something, it's great. He says we practice at our school courts, and they're relatively protected from wind. When playing teams that always practice at the beach, we're definitely at a disadvantage. And I think I understand exactly what you're saying, but I think that while you are at practice, you can still create scenarios that your players have to follow. Yes. You know, you can say, hey, for this next drill, the wind is going to be blowing from this side of the court to this side of the court. And maybe you extend the court on that side by a couple feet to make it a little bit trickier. It just popped into my mind. I've never done this before, but I think it would be something that could work. Maybe if you're dealing with a headwind, maybe you extend the court on the other side of the net by a foot or two, you know. And I think that if you can I know that you're not doing this, Mark, because I can tell that you're a phenomenal coach just from how much you're listening. But if we go into matches just automatically thinking, oh, it's a windy day, we're at a disadvantage, then that kind of brings me back to my first point of just that's already you stepping into that kind of negative self-talk. And if we can create these environments at practice, so Mark, maybe if you want to shoot me an email or something like that, maybe we can talk about this and brainstorm and come up with some really cool idea. But I think that there's something that we could do to create this environment without necessarily having it. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up because I kind of had like a light bulb moment at some point that I kind of want to dive a little bit deeper into at some point.
Yeah, I like just giving those responsibilities. Say every time you set, you need to use a bump spin set. Because we're going to pretend the wind is somewhere. Just getting somebody to pretend that the wind is there, or forcing them to learn how to bump spin set. At least they'll have a skill that's prepared for that environment.
Or same thing on this one, you have to go back. You are not allowed to stay on the left side of the court. You know, like making every single person have to go do a back set. That way, it's when you get to the beach and you feel that wind. Maybe it's not the first time that they felt it.
Oh, the last one that I would give is play our under the top of the antenna game. Every pass, dig, and set need to stay underneath the top of the antenna so that you get used to that when you need it. You get used to moving faster, positioning early, waiting for touches so that you can control that. And that develops strength and agility too, because your players have to sit longer and hold their strength into those low, deep leg positions. So there's a number. You could extend the court, you can force back sets, you can force spin sets, and you can play the under the top of the antenna game. And those are great ways when you're in a non-windy place to simulate wind so that your teams are not freaking out when it does happen.
Yeah, I love that under the top of the antenna idea, because that's the whole reason that we do this low ball is because when you are closer to the ground, you're eliminating some of the wind. So it's not going to feel too much different than normal play if you run speed ball at practice.
Right. Cool. Well, guys, this was a great session. We're going to say goodbye to Brandon. I'm going to go through some announcements, and then if anybody has any questions, we can hang out and talk then.
I'll see y'all next time.
All right. So, guys, just a couple announcements. We do have below, you'll find a link, a full ball control and serve receive masterclass waiting for you. So if you want to buy that as a standalone course, you can click that link underneath. If you want to get involved in our coaching program, which means that we meet with you twice a week. You post your videos onto our private Facebook group, and we get to coach you, your game, not just a course that you're watching, but your whole game. And we have all a discourse with each other. Then you're going to go to betteratbeach.com/coaching. Okay. You can check that out. We meet twice a week. You get access to every single course we have and our Max Vertical program. Every video we've ever made gets uploaded to that back end for our members, and it's cleanly organized so that you can find every skill in every area. And I invite you to that so that we can hang out a couple times. We do have, if you are a coach, 50 plus practice plans readily designed for you. Just go to betteratbeach.com/practice plans. And we have upcoming clinics in Salt Lake City, Ozark, San Francisco. I have not yet added New York to this. We might be going to Boston for St. Patty's Day, a little bucket list for me. I'd love to spend a St. Patrick's Day in Boston. And we have a number of clinics. And if you want us to come and run a clinic in your hometown, we'll bring pro coaches, pro players, and we run 3 sessions on a Saturday. And if there is interest, we do private training on the Friday night before that and the Sunday morning after. So if you want us to come to your hometown, hang out with you and teach you volley for a little while, go to betteratbeach.com/clinics, and you can find our dates, our cities, or book us for a date. Okay. And lastly, we have 3 spots left for our April training camp. It's 7-day training camp in St. Pete Beach, Florida. This is the earliest we have ever sold out, and we keep selling out earlier and earlier and earlier. So 3 spots left. I imagine they'll be gone by the end of this day, since we've put out this announcement, but I hope you can make it. And as soon as that sells out, we do have a waiting list. People's plans change. So you will be able to get on the waiting list, and we'll tell you if somebody drops. You'll be the first people that we contact, and you'll have probably 30 minutes to book it once we send out that message. If you guys have any questions, I'm going to be here for one more minute. If not, I'm going to prepare for my online coaching group where they're going to meet me in person. We have a Zoom meeting. We meet face to face, and I'm going to check out all of their videos and give my commentary and critique on their games and their exercises, because we are about to move into the 60-day max vertical program. If you want to join us live, you have missed the first week since you missed the sign up for the foundations group, but you might be able to play a little bit catch up and get with us for the 60-day live max vertical session, which lasts 2 months, guaranteed to increase your vertical jump. Hope you join for that as well. You can see that on our homepage, betteratbeach.com. All right, guys, have a great day. Thanks for joining. Everything that you can find, it can be found on betteratbeach.com. My name is Mark Burik, and I am signing off. Have a great day.